What if the world is in need of a revival, not of technology or economy, but of faith? What signs could point us towards this need? Picture this: a prophet named Habakkuk, living in the same era as Jeremiah, foreseeing the Babylonish captivity of his people. With the impending doom, his soul echoes with a plea: "O Lord, revive thy work." It's as if he's saying, "Lord, let not your judgments render Israel desolate. Amid these formidable years, let your judgments revive faith among us. In wrath, remember mercy." Now transpose this scenario to our present day. Our world, in many ways, mirrors that of Habakkuk's time. There are looming crises, conflicts, and a sense of looming doom. Yet in the midst of it all, there's a growing cry for a revival of faith. Just like Habakkuk, we too might be witnesses to a time where faith seems to be fading, leading us to cry out, "O Lord, revive thy work." What is religion's role in this revival, and why is it considered a work? Religion, in essence, is an act of obedience towards God. It's something for us to do, a duty for us to fulfill. It's a testament to our faith and commitment, a reflection of our spiritual journey. Yet this journey is not always smooth. It's marked by reluctance, resistance, and at times, outright refusal. This is where the divine intervention comes in. Our great wickedness and reluctance to obey call for the influence of God's Spirit. Were it not for this influence, there would be no need to pray, "O Lord, revive thy work." The very necessity of such a prayer lies in our inherent indisposition to obey. Unless God interposes with the influence of His Spirit, not a single person on earth would ever obey the commands of God. In this context, the phrase, "revive thy work," takes on a deeper meaning. It's not just about reawakening faith or rekindling devotion. It's about reactivating the work of religion, the work of obedience towards God. It's a plea for divine intervention to overcome our resistance and guide us towards obedience. The term revival of religion also holds a significant implication. It presupposes a declension, a downward trend. It's a recognition of the fact that religious fervor tends to ebb and flow, to rise and fall. And it's an admission of the reality that without revivals, religion would be left to the mercy of our reluctance and resistance. This understanding of revival brings us to an important realization. Revival is not just about faith, it's also about action. It's not just about belief, it's also about obedience. It's not just about the Spirit, it's also about the work. Revival, therefore, is not only a call to faith, but also a call to action, a call to obey and to act. Do we see a pattern of revival and decline in religious history? Indeed, we do. This cyclical pattern is far from new, and it's a tale as old as faith itself. Let's take a journey through the annals of religious history, particularly the rich and turbulent history of the Jewish people. The Jewish faith, like many others, has seen periods of profound spiritual awakening, often referred to as revivals. These were special occasions of intense religious excitement and fervor, where people would turn to the Lord en masse. But these revivals were not constants. They were the peaks in a landscape of highs and lows. Why the lows, you might ask? Well, it's a mix of external influences and the inherent nature of man. After a revival, it wouldn't be long before a host of counteracting influences would set in. The world is full of distractions that can lead our minds away from spirituality. These distractions, coupled with our inherent reluctance to obey, create a powerful tide that pulls us away from the path of faith. This is where the decline in our cycle comes into play. The faith of the people would wane, receding like a tide until it was but a whisper of its former roar. The nation would then be swept away in the vortex of luxury, idolatry, and pride. Yet, just as the tide recedes only to return, so too does faith. It's almost as if the decline is necessary, a setup for the next revival. God, in His infinite wisdom, would use these periods of decline to convict the people of their sins, rebuke them, and thus gain their attention. Amidst the decline, the seed for the next revival is sown. This is the cycle we see throughout religious history, a pattern of revival and decline, a rhythm of faith that resonates with the ebb and flow of a spiritual tide. The ebb and flow of faith, it seems, is a recurring theme in our spiritual journey. But why are these revivals necessary? Could there be a steady, constant growth in faith? Let us delve into this question. Many have tried to maintain a steady momentum in the practice of religion, a gradual and calm progression of faith without the need for the tumultuous waves of revival. The idea seems sound in theory, no doubt, a steady flame consistently burning rather than a fire that flares and dies only to be rekindled. However, reality presents a different picture. The attempts at this steady growth have, more often than not, ended in futility. The reason is simple yet profound. Religion faces a constant stream of counteracting influences. The world is filled with distractions that lead our minds away from faith, that oppose the influence of the gospel. These distractions are like a dampening blanket on the steady flame, gradually suffocating it until it is but a weak flicker, barely alive. This is where the necessity of revivals comes into play. A revival is akin to a gust of wind that breathes life into the dying embers. It raises an excitement among people, a powerful tide that sweeps away the opposing obstacles. It arouses the masses, breaks through the counteracting influences, and leads them back to obedience to God. Consider the history of the Jews. God often maintained religion among them through special occasions that sparked great excitement, turning people back to the Lord. But soon, the counteracting influences would creep in. Religion would decline, and the people would be swept away in the vortex of luxury, idolatry, and pride. The church, in its current state, lacks the stability of purpose to stand firm against these opposing forces. Unless greatly excited, it tends to stray from its path and do nothing to promote the glory of God. Thus, until the world reaches a state of spiritual maturity, religion must be primarily promoted by means of revivals. So it seems the storm of revival is necessary to clear the air of complacency and reignite the flame of faith. What does this mean for us today? Do we hear Habakkuk's cry echoing in our time? As we traverse the current landscape of our world, we are met with signs that indicate a need for revival. Just as in the time of Habakkuk, we are in the midst of years that call for divine intervention. We witness the wavering faith of many, the escalating secularism, and the widespread apathy towards spiritual matters. These are clear signs that mirror the times of declension in Habakkuk's era. The spirit of indifference towards God's commandments and the reluctance to obey His will, much like what the prophet witnessed, are prevalent today. But how do we respond to these signs? We can glean wisdom from Habakkuk's plea. He did not merely lament the state of his nation, but he looked towards God, imploring Him to revive His work. He sought divine intervention, not as a means of escape, but as a catalyst for spiritual rejuvenation. In our modern context, this could mean invoking God's Spirit to inspire a renewed passion for righteousness in our hearts, to awaken a desire for spiritual growth, and to ignite a fervor for God's Word. It means acknowledging our own shortcomings and our collective need for a spiritual rekindling. Moreover, we can learn from the cyclic nature of revivals in the past. The prophet's plea was not for a one-time revival, but for a continuous resurgence of faith amidst trials. This teaches us that revivals are not mere events, but ongoing processes that require our active participation. We are called to be instruments of revival in our own spheres, to live out our faith vibrantly, to uphold God's commandments, and to extend His love and mercy to those around us. Perhaps it is time for us to echo Habakkuk's plea, "O Lord, revive Thy work." Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed. We delved into the prophecy of Habakkuk, a voice crying out in the wilderness, pleading for a revival of God's work during a time of impending crisis. The prophet's cry is more than just a historical event. It's a timeless call to action, urging us to consider religion as a divine work that we, as humans, are tasked to do. We also explored the cyclic nature of religious revival and decline, a pattern observed throughout history. This cycle underscores the necessity of revivals, powerful excitations that awaken the spirit and prompt obedience to divine commands. Finally, we contemplated the call for a modern revival, a plea for us to rekindle our faith and commitment. It's a call to action, an invitation to participate in the great work of faith. In the midst of our years, in the midst of our challenges, may we find the courage to seek revival, to echo Habakkuk's plea, and to participate in the great work of faith.